Hi there. Welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast. I'm your host, Kathleen Gellatly, and I'm super excited to have you join us. In these episodes, we're going to have some heart-to-heart conversations with experts, everyday wellness enthusiasts, and, well, anyone with a story to share about their journey towards a more balanced and harmonious life. Welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast, where well-being meets wisdom, and the journey is just as important as the destination. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. So we are on episode 12 today. Welcome to the Aligned Living Podcast. It's so lovely to have you all here. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or whether you are listening to it on your favorite podcast platform, thanks for joining. Today, I feel like I always say that I'm super, super excited, but I really am today super excited to introduce you to one of my closest friends and teachers and guides and inspirations, and there are many other words I could use to describe her, but we have today Gabriela Fraser joining us, and I'm actually going to just kick it off with Gabs. Thank you so much for being here today. I know that you and I could sit here and do like a 10-hour long conversation. So it's like deciding on what we wanted to talk about today was also tricky because you are such a multi-dimensional, multi-talented human. And so we'll see how the chat goes. But thank you so much for making the time to be here. I really appreciate it. And I know that you're just going to drop so many little nuggets of wisdom. How are you doing today? How are you feeling?
Amazing. Thank you. I'm so stoked to be here. Had a swim in the sea this morning, feeling so good. The sun's out, starting to get a little bit warmer. So yeah, always love chatting to you. It's very difficult to limit our time together. We always somehow have to put like a timer on or something. So good luck to us today.
Good luck to us today. Thanks so much, Gobs. I think I better get my bum into the ocean as well today. But I think, for those who are listening, I think a lot of the humans in my community already know you, because you've been a part of my community and I've been a part of your community since kind of the very beginning of both our journeys in multiple ways. Our friendship started probably over 10 years ago now at this point.
Definitely.
Yeah.
10, over 10. Yeah, I think we're going on 11 years now.
Going on 11 years now, and flip, it's been a wild ride. But for those who might not know you yet, I'd love for you to just tell us a little more about who you are, where you're from, and one of the questions that really I love to ask people, especially on this podcast specifically, is kind of when is your earliest memories of maybe starting your healing journey, your health journey, your maybe like where your awareness really started to spark?
Sure. So many big questions already. I am Gabriela, obviously, Charlotte Fraser. It's so funny how that name, along with so many reinventions of self, has changed and transformed and come into different nicknames and all that kind of thing. But I'm South African. I'm from the Eastern Cape. I grew up on a farm, still very much a farm girl at heart. And I really do love staying true to that. I think it's made me the person I am, of course, and I feel so privileged to have grown up in that way. I guess a little bit more about me right now is I've just been doing a lot of writing for my website, and I currently, sort of stage name go by Gabriela Charlotte. And yeah, I'm a creative entrepreneur. I've done a lot of different things over the years, but I've kind of settled on that one that kind of encompasses all the many different things. And I think to just dive straight into the healing or the wellness journey, I mean, it's funny, I was actually thinking just yesterday with doing that website writing and I've been going to acupuncture this week. I started going to acupuncture when I was about 15 years old. I was quite fortunate. My mum was always quite open-minded to things. So of course I went to, traditional, Western doctors, but I was also, open to or exposed to trying different things. So it's difficult to pinpoint a time of when the awareness journey really started, because I've always also been very curious by nature. I'd say I grew up Christian, but something that really opened my mind to spiritual wellness is actually reading Life of Pi, and how he took little bits of each sort of religion and formed his own religion like that. That really stuck with me when I was younger. Books definitely increased my awareness massively. I've always been an avid reader. But yeah, and then on the Western medicine side, I always struggled with my skin when I was young. Doctor put me on like the pill, and I had the worst reaction to it ever. And after that, I was just like, there's got to be another way. Obviously, growing up on a farm, I'm naturally a sort of naturalist. And yeah, I really started to look to food and how that can heal me from the inside. And yeah, yoga was definitely a cornerstone in really opening up, like the third eye, the inner knowing and the inner healing. Until then, I think it had probably been a lot of outward skin, muscle aches, that kind of thing. So yeah, and that was at about 22. I started doing yoga.
So much in that. And actually, you reminded me now that we started going for specialized kinesiology when we were still in like 15 or so, like high school. Like I think we might even have gone for, like, when we were in primary school already, my mom took us for specialized kinesiology sessions. And that also came around my sister getting like kind of like an immune disease. It's called idiopathische urticarie, I think is like the Afrikaans medical term for it. And the basics of it, as far as I mean, don't quote me on this, someone who's listening to this who's a doctor is going to be like, she's talking nonsense. But as far as I remember, she would have these really extreme reactions to temperature change. So if she would jump in a cold swimming pool, she'd get like a full-on rash. She also had like scarlet fever when she was growing up. Like, we both had like really crazy things. And so my mom was also, I think, like, thank you for Western medicine, but there might have to be like another way, there might have to be a different route. And I guess that's, why they do call it alternative medicine, even though I feel like we should switch that phrase around and maybe start calling Western medicine the alternative medicine, because the traditional medicines have been around for like so long. And I mean, Thomas from the Charlotte, he always says, there's a lot of things that are scientifically unproven, but they're experientially true. And watching you and watching your journey, and I'm going to use this as a little segue, watching how you've really, you spoke now to how you can heal yourself from the inside with food. And food is a massive, massive, massive thing. It's tied to our emotions. A lot of people aren't super educated on what they're actually eating. A lot of people aren't connected to their bodies enough to feel through the senses, through our sense of interoception, through awareness, what happens. Like, oh, wait, I bloat after I eat bread every time. Maybe I shouldn't be eating the gluten, or whatever the case might be. I'd love for you to maybe chat a little, because when I met you, you were always like kind of into food, but when I met you, that wasn't really where you were like directing your energy and your research and your studies. How did that happen? And was there a moment in time where you just went like, whoa, like I've got to make a change here, something is off? Or, I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, again, it's interesting thinking like, the question, where does your healing journey start? Because I think for some of us, it's, almost before we're born, we have that ancestral trauma, and I'm a firm believer in energy and the transfer thereof. I mean, when I was born, I was so sick. I was put straight into an incubator for the first 2 weeks of my life. I had a combination of colic and whooping cough and diarrhea. And what I then found out later was, or what they found out later was, I was like hyperallergic to my mom's breast milk, which is a huge conversation if you really want to get into the psychology behind that. But obviously having that understanding, you can be allergic to different things within milk. It might be the protein or the lactose. And even though I had that as a young child, obviously you then go through life, I got put onto formula, but you then slowly start eating dairy again, not really thinking, obviously animal dairy is quite different to, mother's dairy, your own mother's milk. And it's funny enough, it was exactly through food that I realized that food was the poison. When, we got to know each other, I was very much working in the high pressure events industry and fast paced fashion world. And I was chefing whenever I could in part-time gigs because I had a lot of friends that were chefs and, it was a little bit of extra money, but I obviously also had interest in food. And I was chefing at the time with an Italian, eating and cooking so much pasta, cream, milk, butter, and like milk is probably the most poisonous thing to me. I haven't had a sip of milk probably in about 8 years or something. Like I can't touch the stuff at all. And I didn't drink it all. And I woke up the one morning and I was like, oh my God, I feel awful. I feel like hung over as all hell, but I didn't touch wine last night. So what's happening here? And I started thinking like, but what did I put in my body yesterday? And I was like, well, I had some of the, cream dessert, and I had some of the pasta, and I had some of the cheesy souffle starter. I was like, something. And then I like started tracking like when have I else have I eaten pasta that's affected me, when else have I had a lot of milk, and then you start like kind of connecting the dots. And I was very fortunate, credit where credit is due. I was living with another very good friend of mine, Arabella, at the time, and she was studying her integrative nutrition studies, and she was very much on the healing journey, on the yoga journey, on the meditation journey, and has always been a huge inspiration to me. And she was doing a bit of health coaching, and she kind of said to me like, Gabs, like, start seeing like when you cut that out how you feel, and then start seeing if you eat it again what happens. So she kind of helped coach me in the awareness around what was happening in my body when I ate those certain foods. And yeah, I'd say it was probably then and there that I was like, right, I need to make a change. But change isn't easy, and it's taken a long time because you kind of swing to the extreme. You then go into total deprivation of, well, I can't have anything nice. Any nice creamy coffee, cappuccino, ice cream, chocolate, anything delicious is now gone from my life. So it went from a journey of that extremity to then like binging, to then moving out of the extreme phase and going, well, a little bit here and there, let me see what my tolerances are, let me see what kind of dairy my body can tolerate. And now, after years, it's probably after about 6 years, I'd say I'm in a really sweet spot where, I can have a bite of cake, nice, creamy, delicious cake. I can have the odd block of chocolate now and then. I can have a bit of Parmesan. I can eat a bit of goat cheese. And my body can kind of tolerate that, but never too much at once and never in the extreme. So it's now sort of in a maintenance phase. And it's incredible how it's healed my body from the inside out. I can't preach it enough.
And thanks, Garbs. I know that this is quite a, what's the word? It's quite a it's like it happens for a lot of people. What's the word that I'm looking for? Common. Being, struggling with your body being able to tolerate, especially lactose, especially gluten. That a lot of people do struggle with that. And I think where the fear comes in around what am I going to do now is that idea of, oh, but now I can't have any of the things that I love. I can't have any of the good things anymore. And a lot of those, I guess, like those ingredients, I think, are quite linked to sugar. So it's like, if I'm giving up dairy, like you say, then I'm giving up potentially the cake, the ice cream, my milk and my like latte, like in my coffee, and those things are linked to things that also have sugar in them. So then it's like, well, now I'm having to give up so many things that have sugar in. And as we know, it's one of the, if not the biggest addiction that there is globally. And so it becomes like this. I mean, we did the cleanse together in June. And when you start kind of eliminating those things, what's interesting is that we do make up these stories in our mind that now I have to give up like the one thing that I really enjoy is my glass of wine or my chocolate at night or my cupcake on a Saturday morning or whatever the case is. And we've attached so much to that specific thing, and that the idea and the feeling around all of that. What I wanted to say now, I'm trying to think, I'm like going off into a million directions in my head.
Can I interject quickly?
Yeah.
Just going on to the sugar thing, I think what's been the most interesting with the food journey is realizing, so many people these days, everyone and anyone's got an intolerance. And I've got no judgment on that, because I didn't really know it was happening in my body until I started becoming aware. I can't, with the dairy intolerance, I started realizing the gluten intolerance and the effect having a beer would have on my body. So it's a long learning process. And then you start really realizing, oh, wait, but couscous also has gluten in, and bulgur wheat also has gluten, is also glutinous, and, little stock cubes, and flavoring on chips.
Hidden everywhere.
Soy sauce, it's everywhere. And you don't know these things. It's a learning journey. But what I found mostly is, along with, and this is, paralleled on the chefing and the cooking journey, and I consider myself a conscious chef. I try to use conscious ingredients and cook in a conscious way, in a way that fuels your body, and with ingredients and sourcing them in a way, that's relatively kind to the earth. And when you start looking at really good quality stone ground ancient grain bread, you're not going to react to it nearly as much as you would to very processed white bread or something. Or if you have raw fresh farm milk, I could probably have a couple of sips of that and not react at all either, because it hasn't gone through so much processing. So what I'm also learning later in life is all the preservatives and all the chemicals is probably what's making us more sick than the intolerances, because things like dairy and gluten are two of the most processed kind of foods you can eat, unless you're eating, all the fake meats and that kind of thing. But that's really where I think a lot of the poison lies. And when you find something, like you say, at first it can be this like, oh, everything I love is being taken away. But then you can flip it on its head and go, well, I can really use this to learn more, to expand my portfolio, to share my learnings, to educate myself and find out what I can eat. Like I made my own dark chocolate yesterday with coconut oil and cocoa and roasted hazelnuts. How amazing is that? It's bloody delicious. I've eaten more than half of it already.
That's actually, you brought me back to the point that I wanted to bring up, is that I think one of the things that is so inspiring about you is that you've taken a situation where I think a lot of people might go into see it as like the negative of like, again, like now I'm having to like not tell myself that I'm not allowed to have things, and this feeling of giving things up, and this feeling of having to sacrifice, and this feeling of being almost a victim to the situation. And I've seen, like how you've almost turned it around and gone like, okay, cool. So there's this thing that I really like, say it's like a chocolate cake or whatever, but the ingredients that are in there are not serving my body. So how can I go and take other ingredients that are not only not going to put me like in a state of feeling ill or feeling sick or having a reaction, but are going to maybe even nourish my body even more. I mean, for those who don't know, Gabs is also the chef on the Aligned Living Silent retreat that we are running twice a year now in Montague in South Africa. And I cannot tell you how delicious her food actually is. And it's from a place of cooking and discovering and experimenting and learning for yourself, and being able to like confidently put like the cashew nut brittle that you made. Oh my goodness. Like the cake, the salads, the everything is that I think we live with these blind, or these what's oogklappies? What do you put on horses?
Blinkers.
We live with like these blinkers on, and the truth is that you don't know what you don't know. But I think before you just like jump into the mentality of like, now like, oh, now this has all been taken away from me, it's like, how do I maybe explore and experiment more with that? And I'm going to use that as a little segue to take us a little more into, I guess, your awareness journey that I know has been, I mean, you've always run, I feel like, multiple businesses in like multiple different industries, and all of them requiring you to be quite creative, and all of them asking you to constantly evolve and be aware. I mean, whether it comes to your fashion, whether it comes to your designs, whether it comes to your yoga, it's all what you do has always required quite a lot of self-growth and transformation and awareness to continue like moving on to the next thing. I'd love for you to share a little bit about your yoga journey, and how that perhaps has also played a role in your personal transformation, in your awareness. If there's anything in there, I know that with yoga practice, you start doing a lot more work around cleansing, around digestive strength, lymphatic drainage, which all kind of ties in with the food as well.
Yeah, sure. Yoga changed my life, in so many ways. Sure. And again, credit where credit is due. My sister took me to my first ever yoga class. I was like a little newbie, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed farm girl in Cape Town for the first time. And my sister Claudia took me to a yoga class on the Greenpoint Promenade and it was actually led by Green Pup, when Green Pup was still sort of in its, maybe not infancy, but sort of like toddlers. And I actually subsequently landed up working for them later in life. But yeah, I did a yoga class on the prom and I was like, I don't have a yoga mat. You feel so awkward when you do something for the first time. You're like, I don't, what to expect. I'm going to be bad at this. And yeah, I was living in Sea Point at the time and I got into going into one of the studios there. They had free classes and then started going more and more till, next thing you know, I was doing a 30-day intensive yoga challenge. And fast forward even a few more years and I did my yoga teacher training, Geeks, a lot thanks to your encouragement. And I think, just like with yoga, stepping into that role of teacher or leader into leadership requires constant evolution. If you want to be teaching or guiding or sharing or leading, in business, in yoga, in work, in creativity, and whatever it is you're doing, you need to be in a constant cycle of self-reflection, observation, self-reflection, growth, gleaning the lessons, using what you've learned, moving forward, instead of getting stuck on that circle anywhere and then getting into transcending into another layer or another level, and then observing, reflecting, noticing yourself through that cycle. And I think yoga has been so instrumental in just giving me the tools to navigate that cycle, because it can be quite uncomfortable looking at yourself. It can be quite uncomfortable looking at your patterns. It can be quite dark at times. It can be enlightening. It can be like, it's a bit like shell shocking, and you kind of want to run away and go backwards in the circle, but you kind of got to keep going forwards because you have to show up at work and you have to show up as a boss and you have to keep the wheel turning and bring the money in and pay the staff and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I think yoga really just helped me equip me with tools to do that with a calm state of mind, meditation, getting onto your mat, moving through your body when things are feeling overwhelming, sitting with whatever's uncomfortable, just learning simply that, sit with it. Little bits often, practice, teaching you to practice. At school we do sports, but it's quite, I don't know if aggressive is the right word, but it's very competitive. You're trying to make the first team and you're trying to beat the other team and you're trying to beat your opponent, where there is practice involved, but it's less about the practice and more about the results every weekend of every match.
Yeah.
What I've loved about yoga is there's no end. There's no like, cool, we're all going to go to this yoga, I don't know, challenge and we're all going to see who's the best yogi. Nothing like that exists. And as much as people try, and perhaps compete, and I don't know, through social media, whatever, if you're a true yogi, you'll know there is no competition. It's only with yourself, and not even necessarily competition, more so observation of, well, this is where I'm at today. And I think on the other side of that, I hit rock bottom a few times, girl. I burnt out. I didn't know what my limits were, as any 20-year-old probably doesn't know. Of course, there are some incredible, very advanced and mature, and especially these days, much more evolved 20-year-olds.
Yeah.
But I was still learning where the banks of my river were and how fast I could flow and how quickly I could, rush through things and then slipping and falling on the rocks or whatever it was, and then having to pick myself back up again slowly. And stretching out of, probably a bit of discomfort, a bit of pain, slowing it down, checking in. So yeah, it's really been an amazing tool for my own self-healing, because business is very grueling, especially entrepreneurship. It's very lonely, and I could go on forever about all the lessons yoga's taught me. It's yeah, and it really, once you've done enough of it, it really does become the way you live your life. And being able to manage yourself in that way and do things differently, and not scream and shout and be crazy authority or dictatorial or anything like this, and actually be a really compassionate leader, I think is where the magic has really sort of sparkled for me, especially more recently in my latest business.
Oh, I feel that so much, and I love that you brought up the competitiveness that we are taught from such a young age to be the best, but you're working to achieve. And it's so interesting because the two podcasts before this one, episode 10 and 11, which I did with Tori Uschat and Gina Fascio, they were both athletes. Tori was like the all-American athlete. She did a thing called I can't remember what it's called. Something, I'm gonna have to get that word, but I think it's something like 6 or 7 different athletics events that you do together. Like you do it over 2 days, like insane. Gina was South African wakeboarding champion. She went international. And both their stories are very much that they were in this thing and they were like working to get to the goal. And both of them said, then when I got there, then it was like, cool, like they did not get the satisfaction and the approval that they thought that they would get from reaching that goal. And so it's interesting that we are forced to be that way from such a very young age. And it's not to say that we shouldn't strive to like be number one or be at the top of our game. Like, I think it's so healthy to have ambition and to have that yang energy, that driving force. But especially as women, there has to be this balance of giving and receiving. There has to be a softening, and there has to be a look at the fact that life is not linear. We're not stepping forward and ticking, ticking. Like everything is like this. It's all in a cycle, right? We as women, like especially like our cyclical nature is so prominent actually in how we should be living our lives and how we should be seeing things. Is that things come and go, and the only constant is change. And I think that I'd love for you to share a little more about how you have found that balance of masculine and feminine energy, especially being the boss lady that you are, the queen that you are. I know that it has been incredibly tough. You've managed multiple businesses. You also do business training where you help other business owners, where you help entrepreneurs to set up systems, you've helped me. We had amazing sessions, and they've just like, it takes a while to integrate everything that you learn from someone, but you really look at it as like a holistic thing, like what you're doing at home versus what you're doing when you're at your workspace versus what you're doing in your free time versus what you're doing when when you've got your procrastination time. I think that's one of the like little tools or like little tricks that I love the most that I learned from you is, you were saying like, how do you positively procrastinate? So when you've got that time where you're like, I need just like a little bit of time off and I want to procrastinate, and you're like, okay, cool. So procrastinate, but maybe you can use that procrastination time for it to be like positive procrastination. So like now I found this really big love for like organizing my files on my laptop when I'm like, I can't do any work. I just want to like maybe like have Netflix open on the side or be listening to a podcast. And then I'm like, cool, I'm going to do that. But then I'm going to like tick off something that's on my to-do list that needs to get done anyway. So I mean, there's like a whole list of everything that I really found valuable. But okay, so I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to break it down again. I'd love to hear a little more about the feminine and the masculine energy, the yin and the yang, how you find that personally at your within your workspace, and then let that maybe guide you to share a little bit more about your experience as an entrepreneur and with business. Take a breather and explore the Aligned Living on-demand video library, along with our exclusive membership perks. Plus, our YouTube channel is already up and running, offering even more wellness content. Your path to holistic living is just one click away. Visit our website to learn more. And now, let's return to our inspiring discussion.
Yeah, sure. It's sure. Like I had a registered company at the age of 22. I had 2 businesses at the age of 22. I was so green in the gills. Like I really had very little idea of what I was doing. And, being sort of, I was going to say like sort of throwing myself into business at such a young age and paying staff every week and, weighing up like, am I going to go party or am I going to pay my staff, and that kind of responsibility so young when, I guess most people were just getting a salary and spending it. Any money I was making, I was distributing to sort of generate more. And by doing that for so long, I found that I really, really, really hardened. I became quite masculine. I don't want to go too much into this, but I found myself in 3 very sort of memorable situations with older males in the workplace that really challenged being a woman in the workplace, especially around skill, pay, respect, boundaries, all that kind of thing. And I was quite young, and at that stage, again, as I say, you're figuring out those extremities of one bank to the other, and I was like, shit, I need to toughen up. I need to like really harden up, and I started getting a lot harder and a lot more yang and a lot more masculine and a lot more outward, and there was very little time and space for softness. Even my yoga practice was strong. It was power yoga. It was intense, like sweating and like at the front of the class trying to do the handstand and very in that ego, which, in a lot of ways is quite related to the yang. It's the sun, it's the outer. I resonate a lot with the sun. I think in many ways, I am a tomboy. I am quite yang in many ways. And I then had a big personal knock in my life, and it absolutely shattered any hardness I had. And I was a pile of mush. I was an absolute little crumbled heap of, the cookie had crumbled big time. And I had to slowly build myself up again, and I couldn't quite get to that same strength that I thought I needed, and that hardness that I was kind of operating in. And weirdly enough, that same Italian that I cooked with said something to me that I've never ever forgotten. It's been, a cornerstone of my development as a human being. The simple term, firm but gentle. How can you balance masculine and feminine? And a way to do that is by being firm but gentle. And it's being firm with the rules, like the rules are the rules. This is how I run my business. This is how things work here. This is the law, in South Africa or whatever the case is. But how can you be gentle with enforcing those? And how can you be gentle with the people that you're communicating these to? So there's a bit of a balance. There's respect and authority, but there's also an open door and compassion for the human experience. When someone is really struggling, maybe they're not meeting that hard boundary or law, whatever it is, or expectation you have at work, but it's that femininity and that softness that allows you to see. I think women, instinctively we are nurturers, and to nurture, you need to be able to see that someone needs nurture. And yeah, it's been, as I've then, grown older and continued with business, I've also been influenced by different people I've worked with. I worked for a very soft boss in a very soft sort of organizational structure, very like lots of time in nature. It was perfect for me at the time. It was what I needed to heal after crumbling. And then I worked in a very hard environment, harsh city, hard boss. And I also learned from that, it was these 2 extremes. But again, I kind of found myself like, well, I want to be somewhere in the middle of that. I don't want to be too hard, and I don't want to be too soft, because you can't be too soft, you'll be walked all over. And you can't be too hard because you won't be able to relate to anyone. And, as I mentioned earlier, I've done all kinds of like, not just alternative healing, but alternative like self-development practices. I went to a business coach, and it was an old white male, to be blunt, 60 something, done his corporate years. And he, out of all people, said to me, there is no way you can separate emotions from business. What is happening at home is happening for you throughout your day at work. What is happening at work is happening for you throughout your evening when you get home to your family and your home and whatever it is. And I found that really profound, because I think it's almost old school thinking that, like, when you get to work, put your work hat on and leave your emotions at the door, which, yes, there's value in that. I absolutely agree. You can't be like crying all over the table and, every day, kind of tapping out for mental health. You also need to build resilience and show up and work through that stuff. But I think at the same time, again, going into the masculine, feminine, just understanding that sometimes when someone is going through a really difficult time in their life, how to sort of navigate that. And it's taken some really hard learning experiences, but learning again how to be firm, right? You still need to do your job. I know you're going through a difficult time, but also being, do you need to take a day off to come back stronger tomorrow, kind of thing. And just finding that balance. I'm a little bit of a feminist and a firm believer. As you can see, I've learned so many lessons from men. I'm not a man hater in any way, but I just think that women have been attuned to our softer sides and our emotional sides forever. And that hasn't had a lot of space in the workplace for a very long time. And I feel that now women really are getting a chance. Like, we're having our moment, to really shine. And I think there's a lot of men are learning from that softer way of being and realizing that not everything has to be so black and white, so hard. There is a softer way to do things and a more kind, compassionate, healing way to lead, especially in the workplace.
I'm gonna snap for that one. Amazing, Gavs. Amazing. It really is, and it's a constant journey. It's a constant evolution, and I know there are a lot of women particularly who are entrepreneurs who listen to this. And I think it's like giving yourself the space and the grace to go, like, because I know for me personally, and I love that you said what your coach said, that you cannot separate the two, right? You can't separate your personal from your business, especially when your business is actually like an extension of you. It's your life's work. It's what you're putting into this world. It's your legacy. It's your footprint. It'll be one of the things that people remember about you, hopefully. And for me, what I've very much struggled with is that I'm either a doormat or I'm a bitch. And so I'm either like in this like super yin, soft, like surrender energy, or I'm like, fuck it, I'm done with this, I'm over this. Like, and that's also very much a generator thing. Lexi and I were laughing about it the other day. If anyone doesn't know human design, I'm a generator. And generators can like get to this point where we just go, all of a sudden we're like, no, fuck it, I'm burning it all to the ground. I'm like, I'm done with this, like it's over. And like, I think in the entrepreneurial space, like it can feel like that a lot of the time, where you maybe like sudden, and then again, I've so much to say around this. I was chatting to Ella, a friend of mine, yesterday, who's an embodiment coach. I'm busy doing training with her at the moment. She's coaching me, and we were really talking about how it is this cycle of, if we think of something like our menstrual cycle, and how, like, generally the archetype and the theme and the feel when you're in your follicular phase is like, I'm super energized and energetic, and I'm like feeling like this and this and this. And then if you're in your luteal phase, you're more like softer energy, maybe a bit more rest, maybe a bit more quiet. And I said to her, it's been so weird this week because I've been in my luteal phase, which is like you preparing to go into your menstrual phase. So it is like this actual time of like quieting down, maybe doing less, maybe not recording the podcasts, maybe not setting up the meetings. But I said to her, then there's another part of me that like it's almost like divine inspiration has dropped, and I just feel like I need to like use that energy while I've got it, because I'm feeling so lit up by everything that I'm doing. And I think where the balance comes in is that something that I'm really working with now is, can I have that divine inspiration? Can I have that energy, which is very like big yang, let's move forward, let's do things, let's like get it done, let's, and then still understand that, but I am in my body and in my energetics, I am also in my luteal phase. So can I still respect that that process is happening at the same time that this other process is happening? And that we don't have to put ourselves in these boxes of, I'm in a good mood or I'm in a bad mood. I'm energized or I'm tired. I'm inspired or I'm not. The human brain wants to make sense of things. So the quicker we can put a label on something, the quicker we can understand it and either like move past it or, whatever. Whereas that's not really how it works. It's cyclical nature. It's multi-dimensional. There are different programs and different things happening and different experiences that you're having at one time. And so can we allow us? Yeah. Go.
Just want to quickly interrupt you. A lot of the conversation has been around like food and healing and, like balancing all of that. And I think, or my sort of perception of what you're speaking into is alignment. It's finding that balance. And I've just started a strength training course.
Yes, girl.
It's strength training aligned to your cycle. And I started it on like in my menstrual phase, and I was like, oh my God, like how am I going to lift weights? I'm going to be tired and drained. And actually it's paired with the nutrition. So I've been feeding myself really, really well with the kind of food that I need. And again, tapping into what we were speaking about earlier, not being able to eat as much dairy and gluten, but then also not trying to be vegan at the same time. Like going, okay, cool. Well, I also really need red meat because I need iron and I need like long lasting energy that I'm not getting from the typical carbs and the dairy kind of thing. So eating really well, tapping into my cycle and adjusting my training. And like my coach, Daniela Corder, who I'm working with on that, says to me, you should feel energized even during your menstrual phase after exercise, if you're exercising correctly. And it's exactly what you're saying, because we're in this phase or that phase, I think so much of it has been stigmatized, taboo. We were chatting about this the other day. When you're in your menstrual phase, you're at your most powerful. Don't hide from the world. You're so intuitive. You're so clear. You're so connected to your body. Use that. For so long, women have been hidden during that time or whatever the case is. And like you say, there can be so many cycles at once. But when you really are balanced and aligned and living in that truth with your body, yourself, your lifestyle, you can actually be quite consistent. You can still do the meetings every week. You can still do the podcast recordings because you're balancing. You might do that, but then for the rest of the day, you're chilling, you're taking a step back, whereas maybe in a different phase, you are doing 5 meetings a day and you can do it easily. Kind of thing. There are ways, I think it's just working with yourself, understanding that.
Yeah, so good. And it's so individual as well. And I say a lot, like, it's not about what you're doing. It's about why you're doing it and how you're doing it. Those are going to almost play a bigger role in the input and output that the situation will require of you than the actual doing of a situation. An easy example is I'm going to set up a coffee date with 2 friends this week. All right. The one friend is just like a really great friend who is very nourishing for me, and I can do like an hour of tea and I leave and I feel great. The other friend, I'm seeing them because I haven't seen them in a long time and I feel really guilty. So, they've messaged me 3 times. I should probably just go do this coffee because I do love them and I do want to see them. And I do the hour of coffee and I'm so tired after that conversation. I did the same thing. I went and had coffee with 2 friends. But how I did it and why I did it really is the difference. And I think that intention, that awareness of our own thought process, where are we lying to ourselves? Where are we running old programs? How are we trying to convince ourselves? Are we in victim mindset? If we can step back and go like, firstly, I don't believe everything I think. Like, I remind myself about that every single day. I'll be like, don't believe everything you think, Kathleen, because it's a wild, wild place up there. And a lot of our thoughts are not true. And can I slow down and actually ask myself, how do I feel about this? What is, you speak about, you've brought it up twice now, like our intuition, our inner guide, our knowing. You spoke about it now when we are really attuned to that during our menstrual phase. But you also spoke about it when you said your yoga journey really led you to having a deeper understanding of the principles of yoga and the study of yoga and the connection to something like the third eye, right? So the third eye center, if you go straight back, goes into the brain. It's about intellect, it's about intuition, and that balance between the two of them. And I think ultimately, you know, intuition in business should be like quite an important fundamental thing that is brought in. I know that you run a lot of workshops around yoga with business. I know that you work with like clients like me who are yoga teachers, which I think is such a beautiful way to bring all your passions together, all your loves together. Before we kind of move off from this topic, I was wondering if there was anything else that kind of sparked up for you, or anything else you wanted to share.
I think, yeah, just simply, you know, as you mentioned, running a workshop as yoga as a tool for business. It's really something I'm working with at the moment. And obviously I imagine this really is a big yoga community, and just taking what you learn in yoga, not just off your mat, but into your business, you know, that consistent practice, that doing the difficult poses, you know, the intention setting, perhaps with your staff, you know, that routine that you get into place. There's so much that we can take from yoga and apply to business to do things differently, firstly, but also more kind, compassionate business, and really lead the way forward in that way, where it's not this hard black or white, this yes or no, this bad mood, good mood. It's a holistic balance and just approach not just to yoga or work or health, but life, you know, and to live in that way and always hold that lightness that we find in our practice. To find that lightness in work, in business, it's practice, but it's definitely possible. And I mean, yeah, I'd obviously love to chat more about that, but just to maybe hopefully spark a little bit of thinking for whoever's listening, because very often
what's your, if you had to like shoot out a piece of advice to entrepreneurs, particularly or let's say like someone who's just starting out with a business, what do you feel are like one or two things that you wish you had known when you first started, that you feel could have or would make a massive be super helpful to someone starting out?
it's going to take longer than you think. And
truth, spill the tea.
Business is a lifestyle. Owning a business is a lifestyle, and as a secondary to that, focus more on building an enjoyable, sustainable daily existence rather than doing whatever needs to be done to get to the goal. Because that's going to put you in that like high school, let me practice hard every week and win the match, you know, only over summer. Rather set up a good routine and a lifestyle that you can maintain, that still allows you to be the best version of yourself, because business will require the best of you. And if you don't have the best to give, you're going to burn out pretty quickly. So rather focus on the daily practice of business rather than the pose or the goal of the business.
Love it. It's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to throw out a little question of, if someone has listened to this and they've gone like, wow, like I'm actually quite interested in maybe figuring out if I have any food intolerances, or maybe playing a little bit around with like more awareness around what I'm eating. What are a few simple ways that people can start that process in their journey with food, with starting to like feel into it a little more? Or how do you learn more? Where do you start? Like, any ideas or inspiration?
Yeah, sure. I think I started this journey a long time ago, and there were way less options than there are now. A lot of people sort of encouraged me, you know, just go for intolerance testing. And at the time, I didn't really have a lot of disposable cash for that kind of thing. I was like, I'm not really going to go spend thousands on like all these random tests, you know, like let me just start feeling it out for myself. And this is just how I went about the journey because of my, you know, sort of constraints at the time. I didn't really know if I was intolerant or not, but I just started noticing I suspected. And I think if you really do drop into your body, you might have an intuition to what might not be working for you or what you might need. And it is going to take a mental clearing, you know, put out the idea out of your mind that you have to be a vegan or you can't eat red meat or this is how your body's built, unless you've already gone through this process. But kind of just get to a blank page and just go, right, I'm not going to eat dairy for a little while and see how I feel. You know, I'm just going to try, even though it might not be like delicious, I'm going to have black coffee for a week and see like, does this make a difference? So firstly, you know, just the classic like elimination and like getting that observation. And remember with food, different things take different amounts of times to digest. So some things you'll digest quickly, but dairy is quite difficult to digest. So generally for most people, even if you're not intolerant to it, it's a more like solid, difficult substance to break down. And it's obviously not a natural substance for a part of it because it is so processed, you know, like cheese or something like that. So don't just, you know, or not don't, but rather stretch your awareness and your observation to a longer time period. So if I've had a big cheesy burger or pasta for lunch, how do I feel afterwards? Do I feel tired, fatigued, lazy? Do I want to sleep? I'm actually fine. Cool. Then you're probably all good. Or is it instant, like, oh, wow, my stomach's immediately sore, or I feel bloated? Or is it actually only maybe later that evening, you go to the toilet and it's a little bit spewy? I'm not going to say anything more than that. Or how do you sleep that night? How do you feel when you wake up? I think waking up is always such a good check because depending on like, obviously it is very often related to sleep, but it's also very often related to what did you eat the day before? And really just starting, you know, become conscious about what you do, become conscious about what you eat. What are you grabbing? Is it the chocolate? Is it the this? You know, and I've never really been someone to read labels so much, but I think what's been the biggest change factor in my journey is speaking about it. Having conversations like this, being vulnerable and sharing on Instagram, chatting to other chefs, chatting to other people. Oh, are you also gluten intolerant? What can't you eat? Because maybe there's something I don't know. And I've definitely learned the most from other people. And food can be such a sensitive space. There's so much emotion attached to it. There's a lot of judgment around food as well about, oh, you eat this, I eat that, you so this. Like there's a lot of judgment. And yeah, I'd say just for yourself, do it in a quiet space where, you know, go and explore and then take those learnings out, get feedback, and then come back and sort of come back to the drawing board and go, okay, cool. Now maybe this week I won't drink beer and won't eat bread. Let me see what happens. Do I feel any different? You know, bearing in mind that if you've been doing those things for a very long time, it might take longer to notice the change or for that stuff to work itself out your body. So it's just really tuning into your body. And of course, doing something like yoga really allows you to do that. But doing any kind of exercise, you know, going for a walk, you can pretty easily tell like, oh gosh, my pants feel tighter today when I put my tight pants on and now they feel tighter, you know, or little things like that. I'm like getting out of breath way quicker, like, and that very often tells us that the rest of your organs are working so hard that you don't have much energy because they can't digest this thing. And now I can tell like instantly if I've eaten something that I didn't know had dairy, and or you go out to a restaurant or you at a friend's place and you don't want to be rude, I can almost like feel the pimple coming like within a few hours, and I can feel my stomach gets uncomfortable, and I could just go, cool, what can I now do to counter this? I'm not really someone to take those lactose-free tablets. As I say, I'm a naturalist. I'll have a huge cup of strong like ginger tea, peppermint tea. Ginger really helps with your digestion. I have a turmeric smoothie with my oranges and my bananas the next morning. Turmeric helps with inflammation. And I then support myself if I know that I have maybe eaten something. So as your journey goes on, talk about it, research it, you'll learn more, you'll find out more, and you'll find out what works for you and for your body.
Picking up on that word journey that you just used, I love how your main like piece of advice within the business world is it's going to take longer than you think. and tying that in with I think our own journey, whether it be your journey with your business, your journey with food, your journey on the mat, your journey with friendships and other humans in this world, your journey with your purpose, your journey with your dharma, whatever it is that, again, just reminding ourselves that we've been programmed to want the quick fixes. We've been programmed to want to see instant results. Like, if like you see like your Uber driver with your food driving around and he takes the wrong street and you're like, oh, now he's going to be 10 minutes later because he took the wrong street, or whatever the case is. Like, you see this happening all around, where people just have no patience anymore. And, you know, as within, so without. And so you can take that as, if you look at as without, you can have maybe a slight indication of what is going on within. And so if you're finding that you're super impatient with things happening for you in your life, or you get super disappointed easily, you get super frustrated, or you know, you make these commitments to making a change but it doesn't really stick, those can really become your mirror for you to see, well, then that's probably how I'm interacting with myself. I'm probably not very patient with myself. I'm probably not very supportive of myself. I'm maybe not very compassionate towards myself or prioritizing myself. And so I love that you speak of journey, because I really think it is. I know for you it has been, I know for me it has been, and I know that it continues to be. It's like, it almost, as hard, I've just gone through, like, if anyone knows, like, dark night of the soul, like, I've just gone through, I always thought I had been through it, and I can now, like, confirm that whatever else I've been through, like, that was not it. What I've just been through has been that, where you start realizing that it's not about the things, it's much, much deeper than that. And when you start to shift on a soul level, everything else starts to have this ripple effect around you. Everything else starts to change. It's really fascinating, and it's really beautiful. And I think that was, I shared on my Instagram today a few stories from Pasathea's Garden, which is it's not really a retreat, it's like an experience that I was a facilitator at a year ago. And I feel like that's really where a lot of big things started happening for me at that particular retreat or experience. Was also where I got a lot of downloads around aligned living, what I wanted it to look like. The podcast, which originally was called As It Is, it's now changed to the Aligned Living Podcast. But living an aligned life, taking away that pressure of finding balance. Like, are things ever really balanced? Like, I don't really know. I feel like things are always in flux and always in motion, and maybe there's like a little bit of balance in the imbalance, but really ultimately finding harmony within yourself. And that's really, really, really hard. But I'd love for you to share what, and you spoke a little bit about it earlier, but what is living an aligned life mean to you? What is living in alignment? What does that make you feel when you hear that? And if you had to describe, like, this is what it is to you.
Sure. Again, a nice big question. And yeah, like, also just on my side, like, thank you for sharing the dark night of the soul. You know, it's, of course, we all choose the positive outlook, but just something I also felt like I had like a mini dark night of the soul in the last month. And, you know, I think it's so important to acknowledge the more negative feelings and the more difficult, complex, you know, sort of emotions that come up for us. I think it's so, no one really wants to talk about it, but it's so important. And it's that balance. You know, we go from super positive to maybe not super negative, but something shit's coming up there. And yeah, I think we all go through many dark nights of the soul. And I think the more you delve deeper, probably the darker they get. I don't know, maybe not darker, but the more intricate that space becomes, and the deeper learning that happens there. Because I find through those experiences, I very often learn the most about myself. It's not when everything's easy and going well. It's like when things are tough, that's when you learn, and that's when you're really, really growing. But yeah, I'd say, and that kind of speaks into being in alignment. I think it's, like getting your wheels aligned. They'll check for how they're turning right, but they'll also check for how they're turning wrong. Like if they do this, is it going to go like that? And I think making time and space for the not so pretty stuff, the negative stuff, the hard stuff, the difficult stuff, I think that keeps me in alignment. But doing it in a way that is supported, that is constructive, that is, I don't want to say like enlightened. I feel like that words become
with awareness.
Quite used, but in those, when you're feeling really deep and dark and down, using your awareness that you've learned and going, wow, I'm feeling really deep and dark and down. I should probably journal and find out like more, like unleash this little bit, like have a cry, let it go. And then, on the contrary of that, when you've done that really hard work, come out, shine. Don't let anyone steal your shine. Get out there, glow, glow, like do what you deserve to do, because you've just gone through tough shit, and now you can actually just get out there again and shine your light, and everything you've learned in that, sort of more cocoon space. I think we often see a dark space or dark time as a negative thing, but take everything that you learned in that very introspective space and go, hey, like, here are all my gifts that I now have to share with you because I've gone and done the work and learned this. So yeah, I think that alignment, that has really put me into alignment. And then having coaches and support like therapists and acupuncturists and
gonna click with that,
business coaches and life coaches and kinesiologists and sound healing has been weirdly healing for my masculine and feminine balance. And yeah, I think once you have those downloads and you learn more about yourself and you really see those truths, I literally said this to my partner just this morning. It's like, I think you need to think long and hard about what you really want and then what you're willing to do to get it. Because I know what I want. And someone asked me that question 7 years ago, and it like shook me. I was like, I don't know what I want. Oh my God, I've never thought that I deserve anything. And, you go through the whole self-worth thing and all these kinds of things. And I then have become so clear on what I want and what I'm willing to do to get it. Sometimes it means firing someone because they're not giving me what I need, because I'm employing you to fulfill a need of mine. I'm paying you to fulfill a need of mine. You need to do it. And if you're not doing it, sorry, so that's where that firm but gentle thing comes in again. But, to live an aligned life, I want to have time to follow my intuition. This morning, I didn't even know the sun would be shining. I had no plan to swim in the ocean. But I followed my little heart, and I've created space in my life to allow pockets of time to do things like that. Where now I'll smash work for the rest of the day. And I've found that that's really helped me stay in alignment. But I also find that when I lose myself in something, and I don't mean in the like positive, getting totally absorbed in something like, oh my God, I'm just so inspired, I can't stop doing this. But in the way you get into that, like, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this for this client. I have to get this work done. I have to. I lose myself, and then I start living for other people, and then I fall out of alignment. And I've just gone through a really, really, really hectic burnout like a month or two ago. And it's taken a lot of healing to get back into alignment again, and realizing like, I can't actually let anyone tell me what to do because I know what I need to do. And then perhaps from that deep sense of wisdom, letting that extrapolate into, I'm no longer going to take clients like that on, because they don't, kind of match. They don't put me in alignment. They take me out of alignment. Because something I also find and experience is when you're aligned, you glow, right? You're like shining, you're at your best, you like in your rhythm. But the minute you've got something epic like that, people want it. And it's a harsh truth, but of course you're going to have the people that are in your corner that are supporting you, but there are going to be those, they don't even know that they're doing it, but that'll try and pull you down and try and take that away from you. And you've really got to work hard and guard those boundaries to guard your alignment. You've got to drive nice and carefully on the road so your wheels don't hit a pothole and like conk out kind of thing. So with coming into alignment, it also takes, you're talking about like what is balance? Is it the balance and the imbalance. If you think about being on like a slack line, it's like 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back, and it's that constant dance and movement, and like maybe working a little bit too hard, but then taking some time off, maybe taking a little bit too much time off, and then actually now I need to push a big day of hard graft and get it done, kind of thing. So it's just really, again, knowing yourself, tuning into yourself. And I think, a lot of those things, but alignment's holistic. You know, it's your nutrition, it's what you absorb, it's what you read, it's what you do, it's how you exercise, it's so much. It's everything in your life that you need to start factoring in. Nothing is in isolation. Alignment is harmony. Like you say, it's everything, you know, kind of coming into place.
I feel like I want to, after this, I'm going to like rewind the last like 5 minutes of you speaking, and I'm going to go listen to all of that, because that was really, really such a beautiful share. Thanks, Gabs.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad that glow came up in the chat now, because we haven't really spoken much about glow itself. I mean, I think it's probably one of the first ways in which you and I worked together was when Glow was born, and you started with your first kind of yoga or active wear rather range. Still some of my favorite photos of wearing your first Glow sets. And I'd love for you to share just quickly a little bit about the businesses that you're currently running, those that are alive and blooming and driving you crazy, but also expanding your heart. The current work that you're doing, also like where can people get in touch with you? Who should be getting in touch with you? Yeah, and I will share all this information in the show notes in any case, but I'd love for you just to share it with us here.
Cool. Yeah, I guess it's like, where do you start? We'll start at the beginning. So I'll kind of go back a bit. But yeah, I studied fashion design. You know, my first little business model was selling my sandwiches at school break times. You know, second business plan was like I was 12 years old, and I wrote a little, you know, business plan for playing music at second break. And then in high school, I was selling dresses to a local boutique that I was making. So food, fashion, events, and obviously behind all of that, the business. And those are my like content pillars, you know, or like what sort of comprises what I do. My first two businesses that I spoke about when I was 22 was a fashion design business, Gabriela Fraser Designs, PTY Ltd. Made loads of like couture stuff and wedding dresses and ready to wear and all that kind of thing, and really got into the whole fashion game and fashion weeks and fashion shows and blah, blah, blah. And alongside that, I started an events company, which was really focused on working with young creatives and, you know, sort of linking them to their more established counterparts and really growing them as creatives and giving them what they need to get into the industry. You know, it's quite difficult breaking into something. And then, yeah, for various reasons, those two were lessons. I took a break, and then in the time of taking a break, I had gone through this big personal cookie crumble, and that was losing my dad. And it sort of shattered, you know, the veil dropped. It shattered everything I had believed to be true. It shattered my sense of safety. It shattered, so my understanding of relationships and connection. And it was in that like really long dark night of the soul that I had to find my own light again. And that was Glow. You know, creativity has always been my innovation and, you know, solution to a way out. You know, when things have been difficult, I'll go into my room and start drawing as a little kid or making things. And creativity has always been like my saving grace. And yeah, starting Glow was kind of the love child of a fashion design background and working with young creatives in this event way and creating a product and a brand, a lifestyle brand that spoke into something that helped me find my own glow, that helped me get out of that dark space. And that was move, flow, glow, you know, finding that movement, getting busy, getting moving, finding the flow, and then glowing, you know, just like effortlessly. So that is my current brand and business. It's kind of gotten me to where I am today after lots of ups and downs and squiggles and backwards and forwards and yeah, you know how it goes, all zigzag. And yeah, now MoveFlow Glow sort of serves as the umbrella brand for Glow clothing, which is obviously part of the lifestyle, really good quality, sustainable clothing that supports a lifestyle of being on the move and on the glow. The food side of it, which has grown a lot more recently, it's food that makes you glow. It's really, food is seeing food as fuel. It's catering, it's doing private chefing, it's doing retreats, amazing retreats with people like you. And then, of course, in the background, there's always that business support. And what I've really found in, starting businesses so young and getting so much experience and making so many mistakes and simply fucking up, I was like, surely I can help someone with all these things I've learned. So I work with small creative businesses and help them, either someone wanting to start a brand, get started. I'm quite action orientated, so I'm a good fire starter. Secondly, if you've already got an existing business, just setting up that business system and structure that a lot of creatives don't necessarily have, or visionaries or salespeople might have other skill sets, but a lot of small businesses just need system and structure. I mean, I needed it. And then alongside that, the kind of coaching, the conscious coaching that goes with building a business, building system, managing staff, integrating processes, getting unstuck. Maybe you've had a business for 4, 5, 6 years and you're at a growth point and you don't quite know how to approach it. Maybe you need a bit of support. I found business coaching, out of all the very many things I've done, probably one of the most valuable things I've ever done. It helped me in every single part of my life. And it actually landed up being almost more personal coaching than business coaching. We did a lot of personal work. And yeah, my coach said to me, he just said, he's like, until you get through these personal blocks, you're not going to be able to unlock the business stuff. And yeah, so I really enjoy that work. It's very, very sacred work to me because it's obviously a lot from personal experience. And yeah, that all happens from a gorgeous little creative studio down the road from my house here in Muizenberg. I surf whenever I can. You can see the surfboard. And yeah, I'm often not in the studio, cooking, on retreats, private chefing around Africa, doing amazing travel cooking experiences. But yeah, otherwise I just absolutely love connecting people and seeing people thrive. So a lot of what I do has kind of got that intention at the heart of it. Clothing that makes you glow, food that makes you glow, like mental support to help you glow and find your own glow and share your shine. And yeah, I'm grateful to all the people that have helped me along the way. And I think it's our duty and responsibility to share that. So yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, like I found so much value. I mean, I just find so much value in you in general, but the business coaching that you helped me with has been instrumental in, I think, me taking, like, you helping me to take myself more seriously and to take my business more seriously. And as I've said, like earlier, like I can be very yin, and you really bringing yang energy to me in a very positive way, in a very constructive way, in a very conscious way, which is something that I really, really needed. And at the time, it's not just like the systems that I did not have that you helped me to create, but at the time I was also looking at employing someone for my business. And I know that you do all those kinds of things as well. Like, how do I set up a proper contract with an employee? How do I make the process nice and clear and transparent? How do I look after myself and my business and the employee to make sure like all parties are happy? And that's just, yeah, it's been so valuable to me. I mean, I wear glow all the time. My favorite is probably your hemp trackie, a little tracksuit. I can't it's like one of my favorite things. And then of course I got a beautiful custom made one-piece swimsuit in like this beautiful like unicorn purple, which is just like, it literally makes me feel like the happiest person on earth. It makes me glow. That's literally what it does. So
Catherine, you were a piece of clothing. You are that costume. You were definitely.
I am that costume. 100%. 100%. Oh, babes, thank you so much. We have, of course, taken our time with this conversation. There was lots that needed to be said. I'll be bringing you back for a part 2 for sure, because I would actually also, I was thinking now of like, oh, I wish we could have dived into like your travels through Africa, and where were you in the tropical place?
Zanzibar.
Oh, there were a few little lessons that came out of that for you as well. I mean, I feel like you could write a book just on that trip. So yeah, there's still lots to discuss, still lots to share. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being vulnerable and open and sharing a lot of personal things. I know it can be really hard, but I know that when people share in that way, it is very, very, very powerful. So thank you so, so much, babes. I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, my keeps. You always just, it's you working so hard and following your dreams that allow space for things like this to happen. So always immensely grateful for you, for all I learned from you. You're such a mentor to me. And yeah, it's just so cool to be able to share your story, because we all work so, like if you're a business owner, you work so hard. It's so nice to just be able to tell your story sometimes for yourself, to just remember like, dang girl, you've done some things, like got some ready life experience, you're here for a reason. And yeah, it's amazing to be reminded of that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate the time.
Yay.
Always well spent.
Honestly, such a pleasure. Like, it's literally such a pleasure. And thank you to those who are listening. Thanks for joining, whether you're watching our faces on YouTube or whether you're listening to our voices on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whichever podcast network you are listening to. Please remember to like, to leave a comment or a question, and to subscribe. Share this if you feel like you know anyone who would benefit from hearing Gabs and me chit chat back and forth. And please feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions, or maybe even any suggestions of some topics that you would like to hear on the Aligned Living podcast in future. Much appreciation to everyone. Have a beautiful, beautiful day. I'm going to go enjoy the sunshine now. And then I've also got to kick some butt on the work front, Gab. So you are not alone on that. And yeah, love you lots. And thanks everyone for listening. And I will catch you all either on Instagram or on the mat or at episode 13 that is coming up. Much love, everyone.
Amazing. Thanks, kids. Lots of love.
Love you. Bye. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Aligned Living podcast. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a fresh perspective on your journey towards holistic well-being. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, your feedback fuels our mission to bring you valuable content that aligns with your life. Stay connected with us on social media for updates, and feel free to reach out with your thoughts, questions, or suggestions for future episodes. We would love to hear from you. But until next time, take good care of yourself, embrace the present moment, and remember, you are your own healer. Thank you for being a part of our community. Goodbye for now.